Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I'm going to tell you about a housing association that says I'm now evicted from my own house. I had just tucked a fresh bag of coffee beans into the grinder when the envelope slid under my front door with the soft menace of a spider. It wasn't even 8 on a Saturday morning, but the stamped return address told me everything I needed to know. The dreaded Homeowners Association. I'll admit I muttered a word my grandmother would have chased me for, because nothing good ever arrives on HOA letterhead before breakfast. What I didn't expect was to flip that envelope open and read the single most un-American sentence I have ever seen in black ink. Notice of reassignment of occupancy. You are required to vacate 14 Hummingbird Lane within 72 hours, so the sister of the board president may assume residency. I stared at the page like it was a math problem scratched in Martian glyphs. A chill rolled across my scalp. Then my jaw clenched tight enough to crack a tooth. My name is Calix, and I own, paid-off, deed-recorded, mortgage to nobody, this tidy townhome on Hummingbird Lane. Bought it the day my late dad's life insurance check cleared. I have the frame-worthy title, the property tax receipts, and a key that squeaks exactly twice before the latch turns. Nobody assigns or reassigns my house except me. Still, the letter fluttered in my trembling hands, and the grind of the coffee slipped from a Saturday luxury to a shaky necessity. While the beans spun, I reread the page, hunting for the prank. Nope. Real letterhead, embossed seal, and the name Zora, our HOA board president of 3 chaotic months, scrawled at the bottom in a blue gel flourish. I sank onto a bar stool, adrenaline now mixing with caffeine. The letter came stapled to a 2-page bylaw amendment, dated the previous evening. According to these fresh rules, the HOA reserved the right to reallocate underutilized dwellings to immediate relatives of board officers, subject to community needs. Translation: Zora's baby sister was about to crash on my couch, permanently. First thought, this has to be illegal. Second thought, she really thinks she can get away with it. While the coffee dripped, I snapped photos of every page and texted them to my friend Florence, a property attorney who defends small-time landlords from big-time headaches. Florence answered with a single all-caps reply. On my way, do not speak to anyone until I get there. Good friends bring casseroles when you're sick. Great friends bring case law when your HOA tries eminent domain by gossip. Florence's Prius screeched up 30 minutes later, door still ajar as she hurried to my kitchen table like a lawyer-shaped tornado. She didn't bother with pleasantries, just scanned the letter, her espresso eyes narrowing. Calix, this is forged trash. She sniffed the paper as if her nose expected the stench of fraud. You can't evict an owner without a judge's signature, and even then, only for tax sale or foreclosure. They'd need to record a lien, win in court, wait out appeals. This, she flicked the amendment with disdain, belongs in a crime novel. Tell that to Zora, I grumbled. But Florence was already pulling a legal pad from her satchel. First, we call the county recorder to confirm your title is still clean. Second, we send a cease and desist. Third, we ready a quiet title suit. She paused just long enough to sip the coffee I shoved toward her. Play it calm. Malicious compliance calm. Let them swing first. That phrase, malicious compliance, settled into my bones like steel reinforcement. If Zora wanted to play HOA tyrant, I'd hand her the rope and let her knot it herself. The next plotline tangled itself before noon. My neighbor Orion, a college freshman whose idea of Saturday fun involves soldering drone parts, rang my bell holding a USB stick. Dude, my new security cams caught something at 3 a.m., he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. I ushered him inside. On my laptop, we watched grainy footage of 2 shadows, one tall, one petite, sneaking along my driveway. They measured my garage door with a tape, then planted a "Notice to Vacate" sign on my lawn. The tall figure's posture matched Zora's professional heels and power bun silhouette. The small one must have been her sister. Introductions, apparently, were optional. Timestamp? Florence asked, scribbling. 3:01 this morning, Orion replied. They came in a car with the plates removed, but I got the VIN reflection in a window. Enhancing now. I nearly hugged the kid. Florence declared the footage Christmas in May for any jury. Our plan adjusted. Gather intel quietly, file at the courthouse publicly, and let due process steamroll the bullies. Mid-afternoon, I caught the sound of knuckles rapping my door. Through the peephole stood Zora herself. Crisp blazer, clipboard, lips pursed in corporate benevolence. Beside her, a woman who looked like Zora minus 15 years and plus an air of entitled sparkle, obviously the sister. I inhaled, let the anger simmer behind a polite smile, and opened the door with Florence standing a pace behind me. "Good afternoon, Mr. Calix," Zora chirped as if we were best friends. "I trust you received the occupancy reassignment notice." I nodded. "I did. Consulted my attorney here. We have questions." Zora's eyes flicked to Florence's badge clip. The sister scowled, tapping a manicured nail on the clipboard. "I understand change is difficult," Zora continued, voice syrupy, words rehearsed. "But the association determined the community would benefit from my sister's expertise in landscape architecture. She needs on-site residence." Florence cleared her throat. "Under what statute are you invoking forced sale or seizure of private property?" Zora's rehearsed calm faltered for a split second. "Article 12, Section 9, as amended." "And was this amendment passed by unanimous homeowner vote with 30-day notice as required?" Florence's smile was all razor. Zora twitched. "Expedited emergency powers." "Not a thing," Florence replied. "You have 60 seconds to leave before we record this as trespass." The sister puffed. "We're being nice, giving you 72 hours. It'll get messy if you resist." Something feral clawed at me, but Florence rested a hand on my arm. "Let messy be on record," she said calmly. "Have a pleasant day." I shut the door. My heart hammered like a piston. Behind the wood, I heard them sputter, then stomp off. Step 1. Escalation triggered. By sunset, Florence located the source of Zora's fabricated authority. The county clerk confirmed a lien had been recorded against my property the previous day, signed by a notary who apparently notarized documents from 3 states away that very same hour. In other words, forged. The recorded amount was laughably small, $200 for community revitalization fee, but any lien can cloud title. The plan was obvious: dirty the paperwork, then claim default, then lease to little sister. Florence filed a fraud alert that evening, plus a motion for emergency injunction first thing Monday. Meanwhile, I decided to serve a dish best eaten on a Ring doorbell camera: malicious compliance flambé. First, I printed the HOA's eviction notice in poster size and taped it to my garage for everyone walking dogs to read. Add a big arrow pointing to Zora's unit with the caption, "Ask President Z why she evicts owners." Next, I rolled my camping cot onto the front lawn and parked myself there with a novel and a cooler of lemonade, announcing to passers-by that I was temporarily homeless per HOA decree. Neighborhood gossip travels faster than gigabit fiber. By evening, joggers were filming TikToks about the eviction that never was. Zora's sister circled the block 3 times in her candy apple coupe, glaring. I waved cheerfully each pass. Plotline 2 ignited Sunday morning, courtesy of Mrs. Maribel, the 90-year-old resident who'd lived here since the homes were new. She waddled over with a cardboard shoebox of dusty binders labeled Old Bylaws. Apparently, Maribel served on the HOA board back when we used typewriters, dear, and had kept every amendment in her garage. We spent the day scanning those pages into PDFs while Florence highlighted discrepancies. Key discovery: the board cannot amend bylaws without either a 2/3 vote or a state-certified emergency related to health and safety. Pretty sure my sister's apartment lease expired doesn't qualify. Monday arrived like a showdown queue. At 9 sharp, Florence and I walked into the county courthouse, filed our injunction, and recorded an affidavit of fraud. The clerk, a jaded soul who's seen every land grab scheme in the book, muttered "another HOA horror show" and stamped the papers with satisfying clunks. While we filed, Zora tried her own stunt. She called a locksmith to change my locks. Fortunately, Orion's motion detector pinged my phone. I pulled up the video. A uniformed tech, Zora waving papers. I dialed the locksmith's number, plastered on his van, and pointed out that performing lock change without a sheriff's writ equaled felony breaking and entering. He bailed so fast his drill still lay on my porch when I got there. I set it gently against Zora's front door with a bow. The sheriff's deputy finally arrived at noon, responding to Zora's frantic "owner refuses to leave" dispatch. I met him with my injunction copies. He skimmed, scratched his head, radioed dispatch, and politely informed Zora that any further interference would earn her silver bracelets. She stomped back home, sister in tow, purple with embarrassment. By midweek, the legal gears ground louder. Florence filed a quiet title action and a civil claim for slander of title, plus damages for emotional distress. She also lodged a state bar complaint against the notary whose stamp adorned the fake lien. Meanwhile, Orion and Mrs. Maribel canvassed the neighborhood, collecting signatures for a special meeting to recall the HOA board. Rumors surfaced that HOA funds paid for Zora's sister's design consultations, amounting to potted succulents at the clubhouse. Finance records posted on the HOA portal suddenly disappeared. Too late. Orion's auto scraper had downloaded monthly ledgers for the last 2 years. Plotline 3, financial impropriety, was now alive and kicking. Florence's forensic accountant friend, Gideon, volunteered a cursory review. He flagged $48,972 coded as landscape improvement, but paid to a shell LLC formed by Zora's sister. The shell's bank account? Same branch as Zora's checking consecutive account numbers. The web of self-dealing gleamed like a spiderweb under blacklight. Thursday evening, the subdivision clubhouse buzzed with bodies for the recall meeting. By bylaws, we needed 50% plus 1 ownership shares. We cleared 68%, thanks largely to old Maribel's relentless phone campaign. When someone asked who'd chair the interim board, dozens of eyes drifted to me. I declined. Lawyers advised I remain a plaintiff, not an official, so Florence accepted with a grin. Watching Zora's face as her gavel was stripped away might top my lifetime highlight reel. But the absolute sugar-free icing came when Gideon stepped to the microphone, projector illuminating the misappropriation charts behind him. Gasps turned to boos. Zora's sister bolted out the back door before the slide showing her LLC's registration date, exactly 1 day before the first landscape payment. The board voted to refer the matter to state authorities. The room erupted in applause that rattled the ceiling tiles. Friday morning, law enforcement arrived. Not for me. 2 agents from the state's Bureau of Financial Protection marched into Zora's townhome. She emerged in handcuffs, tears streaking mascara, while camera phone shutters chattered like cicadas. Her sister surrendered later that afternoon after her attorney negotiated bail. The charge sheet included forgery of a notary seal, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate theft. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, silent as a guard of honor, while the sisters were loaded into separate cruisers. I stood on my porch, coffee mug lifted in salute. The deputy who'd first responded rolled by, window down, and grinned. "Told her messing with title deeds is a federal hobby," he said, tipping his hat. Part of me wanted to declare victory and retreat into peaceful obscurity, but loose ends dangled. The fraudulent lien still slouched on the county books like a stubborn stain. Our quiet title suit needed a judge's signature. The HOA's bank account required forensic cleansing, and I discovered an unexpected subplot. My place of employment, an arts nonprofit, had quietly relied on Zora's sister for landscaping sponsor donations. The entanglement spread farther than a kudzu vine, but one snip at a time would clear them. Florence reminded me that civil justice takes patience. Meanwhile, she suggested we might as well enjoy some poetic payback. The HOA bylaws allowed the board to rent the clubhouse to any homeowner for events. I booked it for the Saturday after the arrest and invited the entire neighborhood to a title deed celebration cookout. Orion lit the grill. Maribel baked cupcakes shaped like tiny houses, and Gideon taught kids how to fingerprint dollar bills with cocoa powder. Even the sheriff swung by for a brisket sandwich. Toward dusk, someone asked me how it felt to still live on Hummingbird Lane despite the eviction notice. I looked around at fairy lights strung over picnic tables, at the elderly, middle-aged, and kid brigade mingling in rare harmony, and realized the eviction had ironically evicted corruption instead. "Feels like due process with a smoky sweet aftertaste," I said, raising a lemonade. Laughter rippled. Still, the last act wasn't complete. Florence predicted at least one surprise motion from Zora's attorney. Desperate countercharges, maybe defamation. My job was to keep detailed logs, stay courteous, and let the gavel swing. That brings us to the present. I'm typing this from my living room, the one nobody managed to reassign, while Florence files yet another brief. The story's climax is on the horizon. Court dates, restitution hearings, and the inevitable auction of Zora's sister's shell company assets to refund the HOA coffers. I promise every twist after today is worth chronicling, but I've already burned through your patience and most of my Saturday. The summons landed in my mailbox the following Tuesday with the weight of a brick. 42 pages of attorney rhetoric accusing me of defamation, public humiliation, and loss of future earning capacity for poor, maligned Zora. Apparently, my lawn chair protest and the neighborhood cookout had hurt her feelings to the tune of $500,000. Florence read the complaint in my kitchen, eyebrows climbing like stage curtains. "She's trying a SLAPP suit," she said, enunciating the acronym like a gavel strike. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. The point isn't to win, it's to drain your wallet and scare you quiet. Bad news for her, I muttered. I won't shut up and you work pro bono. Even better news, Florence replied, flipping to the last page. Our state has a gorgeous anti-SLAPP statute. We file a special motion, and if the judge agrees speech on a matter of public concern is protected, Zora pays our costs. Think of it as a legal rubber band. The harder she yanks, the faster it whips back. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Deposition prep ate the rest of that week. Gideon converted the HOA's vanishing ledgers into glossy printouts the size of cereal boxes. Orion stitched together a highlight reel of every doorbell clip. Zora planting fake notices, little sister measuring my garage, the locksmith bailing when he realized jail wouldn't look good on Yelp. Even Mrs. Maribel got in on the action, labeling each binder tab with neon sticky notes. Forgery, shell company, missing funds, lawn chair saga. Our war room looked like a kindergarten craft table if the kids majored in white-collar crime. 2 nights before the first hearing, plotline number 4 exploded. Literally. At 2:14 a.m., the sprinkler main for the community greenbelt ruptured, sending a geyser 15 feet high. I sprinted outside in pajama pants, flashlight bobbing. Water hammered the sidewalk like drumsticks, flooding half the street. In the spray's edge crouched a scrawny calico cat, soaked, yowling, and tangled in a mess of shredded plastic bags. I waded in, scooped her up, and nearly dropped her when my hand hit something hard beneath the grocery bag nest. A lunchbox-sized PVC canister capped at both ends. The cat had apparently dragged it partly out of the mud where the pressure burst. The side was stenciled with fading ink. HOA maint supplies do not open. Curiosity trumped sleep. I carried the cat home, towel-wrapped her in the laundry room, and pried the canister lid. Inside were 10 debit cards, each emblazoned with the HOA logo and a different board member's name, some of whom had moved away years ago, plus folded receipts from nurseries, hardware stores, and, bizarrely, a downtown jewelry boutique. Florence, summoned by a 2:30 a.m. panic text, arrived in fuzzy slippers. She cataloged the cash like an archaeologist. "This is evidence of deliberate concealment," she said, photographing every card. "Hiding company property off-site to impede an audit is tampering. Combine that with the broken main and you have destruction of infrastructure for cover-up purposes. Also," I added, stroking the trembling cat, "potential attempted kitty homicide." Florence cracked a rare grin. "Let the record show the feline victim has been rescued. We named her Sprocket because she came from a busted pipe and booked a morning vet appointment. Her microchip listed no owner, so by lunchtime I officially had a roommate." The hearing on Zora's defamation fantasy convened that Thursday in Civil Courtroom 3B. I wore my only suit, tie crooked despite Maribel's last-minute adjustments. Zora entered flanked by 2 lawyers and a cameraman I recognized from a local tabloid channel. She'd swapped the power bun for gentle waves, presumably to project vulnerability. Unfortunately for her, Florence's opening salvo dismantled that image in under 4 minutes. "Your Honor," Florence began, "the defendant merely described verifiable events, forged liens, an illegal eviction notice, arrest for wire fraud. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation." She slid a stack of certified copies across to the clerk. "Additionally, the plaintiff's conduct is newsworthy in the community, triggering heightened First Amendment protection." Zora's lead counsel tried to pivot, claiming I'd orchestrated a smear campaign by inviting neighbors to my cookout. The judge, a silver-haired man fond of plain language, removed his glasses and said, "Counselor, folks sharing barbecue and opinions about public figures is older than the Constitution. Move on." Florence then invoked the anti-SLAPP statute. Within half an hour, the judge dismissed Zora's complaint with prejudice and scheduled a separate mini-trial to determine how much she'd reimburse me for fees. The smack of his gavel sounded like someone shutting a steel briefcase on her fingers. We emerged into the hallway, mobbed by neighbors high-fiving. A reporter thrust a mic toward me. I declined, citing pending litigation. But Orion stepped up with teenage bravado and summarized the morning in one sentence. "She sued, the law booed." That clip went viral by dinner. Back home, Sprocket supervised while Florence itemized new charges to tack onto our civil suit. Concealment of corporate assets, reckless property damage, potential animal endangerment. Gideon dug further into the receipts from the buried canister. One jewel store stub matched the date of a community garden mulch expenditure for $6,000. Florence whistled. "Mulch sure sparkles these days." She filed an amended complaint Friday adding embezzlement and racketeering counts. That escalation transferred the case to a higher court and roped in state investigators who love the word racketeering like beekeepers love honey. While the legal snowball rolled, my day job at the arts nonprofit took its turn on stage. The finance director called me into her office, visibly rattled. Turns out they'd discovered forged donation receipts linked to the same Shell LLC. Florence drafted a joint action so the nonprofit could hitch to our wagon, and suddenly Zora and her sister faced a two-front war. Their attorneys attempted a classic divide-and-conquer maneuver. A settlement offer delivered by courier in a thick envelope. It proposed Zora would apologize for misunderstandings, resign from the HOA for personal reasons, and pay a token $5,000 donation to the community playground fund. On the condition I dropped every civil claim and signed an airtight non-disparagement clause. I read it aloud, chuckled, and fed page 1 into my shredder. Sprocket stared as the machine whirred, tail flicking judgment. Even the cat knows better, I told Florence, who filed the rejection within the hour. Deposition day for Zora's sister, Kaya, arrived with July humidity. She wore a pastel blazer that tried to shout "innocent professional," but wilted under sweat. Opposing counsel objected to nearly every question, but Florence was relentless. When she produced a blown-up photo of the broken sprinkler main, complete with timestamp and Kaya's coupe parked 2 car lengths away, Kaya's veneer cracked. "I was scouting landscape improvements," she insisted. "After midnight?" Florence asked. "It's cooler then." "And the concealed debit cards, cooler for them too?" Kaya's lawyer called a recess, eyes daggers. We knew a plea bargain shadow was looming. The state's criminal division tends to sweeten deals for the first to flip. Florence predicted Kaya would throw Zora under a convoy of buses. 2 weeks later at 6 a.m., Zora's bail was revoked. Word reached me via police scanner app before sunrise coffee. Kaya had indeed turned canary, delivering detailed spreadsheets of cash kickbacks and a voice memo where Zora bragged about evicting that weird guy with the drones. The judge deemed Zora a flight risk. She was let out of her home in pink fuzzy slippers. Irony, given that she'd once lectured the HOA meeting on appropriate footwear for common areas. By August, the interim board, still chaired by Florence, published a transparent budget. The deficit from Zora's spree totaled just over 93 grand, insurance covered part, but a special restitution hearing would chart the rest. Gideon projected we could recover every penny once the shell accounts were seized, plus statutory damages. Remember the broken sprinkler? Engineers finally replaced the main, and in doing so found a second canister. This one held only a flash drive. Its single file contained a backup of the HOA's surveillance system, videos Zora had tried to delete. Among them, footage of her forging the locksmith order with a neighbor's stolen letterhead, Kaya loading pallets of decorative stone that never arrived, and, icing on the cake, a clip of Zora counting 20s at her dining room table beside an empty community petty cash box. Florence delivered the drive to the DA's office with the glee of a kid handing Santa a wish list. The assistant prosecutor almost hugged her. September brought the anti-SLAPP fee hearing. Zora, in county-issued beige, watched via video link. The judge tallied Florence's hours, multiplied by the statutory enhancer for frivolous suits, and stuck her with a $38,000 bill payable to me. He also ordered a public apology posted in the HOA newsletter for 6 consecutive months. The apology text would be drafted by Florence, subject to my approval, and Zora's signature line must include her inmate number until release. The gallery erupted in whispers. When the marshal muted Zora's feed, she mouthed something unprintable. I waved. Some lessons require repetition. Life, meanwhile, crept toward normal. The HOA hired a legitimate landscape company. No relatives, no shell games. Orion installed new communal security cameras whose feeds upload straight to cloud storage shared with 3 rotating homeowners, preventing future digital erasures. Gideon coached volunteer treasurers in double-entry bookkeeping. Mrs. Maribel reclaimed her porch piece, knitting while Sprocket napped in the shade. Yet one last shoe dangled over the edge, the quiet title action. A forged lien can't vanish until a judge stamps the void. That final hearing landed in early October. The presiding judge scanned the file, glanced at the notarization discrepancies, and chuckled. "Counsel, the ink on this stamp is from a batch discontinued 5 years ago," he noted. "Forgery isn't just immoral, it's sloppy." With 3 strokes of his pen, he nullified the lien, awarded a declaratory judgment affirming my undisputed ownership, and ordered the county recorder to expunge any cloud on title. I walked out feeling lighter than the courthouse stairs. At home, I slid the freshly embossed certificate of title behind the picture of my dad on the mantel. He'd have enjoyed the irony. The insurance money he left bought a home no con artist could steal. The civil restitution phase finally opened just after Halloween, by which time Zora's lawyer had long since switched from bluster to bargain hunting. Kaya had pled guilty, received probation, and was cooperating in full. Prosecutors recommended Zora serve 18 months and repay every dime. The court also ordered her to perform 800 hours of community service, specifically at the county animal rescue facility, where she would scoop litter boxes for strays like Sprocket. I could not script a neater cosmic punchline. Florence, representing the HOA and the nonprofit jointly, hammered out a settlement. Zora's personal residence would be sold at auction, liens satisfied, and proceeds divided among victims. She'd leave prison owing $0 only if she completed service and continued restitution installment payments for 5 years after release. The judge, stern but fair, approved. He then addressed me directly. "Mr. Calix, the court commends your measured defense of property rights. Had you taken more aggressive, less lawful action, none of this justice would stand. Your patience reinforces the premise that the rule of law, though slow, inevitably arrives." His words warmed something deep inside. Perhaps the same part that once believed HOAs promoted community instead of tyranny. On the walkout, media microphones waited. I issued a single statement. Home ownership in this country is a covenant of responsibility, not an invitation to greed. Today, responsibility won. Then I whisked Sprocket, wearing a tiny collar cam just for charm, into the car and drove home under a sky the color of fresh slate. That night, neighbors gathered again on the Greenbelt, this time for a phoenix party, rising from ashes. Gideon projected old footage of Zora's lawn lectures onto a bedsheet alongside new clips of Kaya repainting the animal shelter. Laughter mingled with empathy. Nobody delights in misery, but accountability tastes sweet. Florence clinked a soda can against mine. "We're nearly done. All that's left is the damages check and the newsletter apology." She pointed to Sprocket chasing moths. "Plus vet bills. Think Zora's restitution covers rabies shots?" "Every penny," I assured her. Across the lawn, the repaired sprinkler system hissed to life, casting arcs that glittered in string-light glow. Children squealed, racing through the mist. Water meant for ornamental fescue now cooled a neighborhood learning together how to audit itself. A month after the restitution order, a court-appointed receiver mailed me a cashier's check for $48,221.19. The civil award, anti-SLAPP fees, and interest from the date of wrongful lien recording until satisfaction. The memo line simply said, "For being right." I'd pictured steak and an absurd espresso machine, but Dad's old counsel whispered, "Use justice money to fix things." First, I reimbursed Florence's filings. Second, I gave $10,000 to the County Animal Rescue Fund for spay clinics and cat condos labeled "In Memory of HOA Corruption." Third, I told my arts nonprofit I'd bankroll a clubhouse mural. Budget, $15,000. Painter Nico sketched a timeline of neighborhood wins. Gray houses blossoming, a sprinkler burst, and atop a roof, an orange and cream calico wearing a tiny crown. Approval was unanimous. Zora's 6-month apology tour began with November's newsletter. A boxed confession read, "I, Zora, abused fiduciary duties, forged documents, and harmed Hummingbird Lane." Her inmate ID trailed like a scarlet letter. Orion laminated it for dorm decor. The apology turned instructional. Florence and I addressed the county HOA council about drone footage and financial sunlight. Her closing slide read, "Sunlight is the best landscape architect." December delivered the sprinkler settlement. Insurance priced Kaya's sabotage at $12,460. She'll repay by painting park benches. The paper's headline, "From landscape designer to landscaper." In March, the interim board met beneath fresh paint to hold official elections. I nominated Kala, a retired contracts teacher who can quote state property code like baseball stats, and she won by a landslide of raised hands. Orion accepted the technology seat, promising triple redundant backups. Maribel became honorary historian, her yellowed binders newly digitized. Kala's first motion created a transparency charter. Every expense over $500 published online within 72 hours, meetings live-streamed, and presidents limited to a single term. The applause rattled the new LED fixtures. January's Wind hosted Restitution Day. Victims, our HOA, my nonprofit, 2 landscapers, and the locksmith sat in a semicircle as checks arrived like late Christmas. The locksmith grinned. New tires, finally. Zora appeared by video, braid neat, voice soft. I'm sorry for treating the community like an ATM and trying to steal a home. Calix's cat reminds me compassion beats control. Even the judge softened. 2 weeks later, at the shelter for Sprocket's booster, I saw Kaya painting kennels and Zora on litter duty. Sprocket trotted over, head-butted Zora's ankle, and purred while she scratched behind the ears. I said, care for them like you did her and the neighborhood might wait. She nodded. Spring thaw meant mural day, tarps, cocoa, kids in paint-flecked hoodies. At sunset, Calla cut a ribbon while sprinklers arced mist. The plaque beneath the crowned cat reads, for vigilance, community, and one Calico's reminder that every home deserves defending. Summer settled. Lawns neat, disputes solved by email, not forged liens. Orion's drone reel won a journalism award. Gideon published a paper on HOA fraud called The Hummingbird Lane Incident. Maribel's Archives headlined a museum exhibit titled Grassroots Neighborhood Budgets Finally Balanced. Bright sunflowers now grow where the fake eviction sign stood. 18 months post-sentencing, Zora mailed a note. She now rehabs foreclosed homes for veterans. Enclosed was a photo of her with a ginger kitten beneath a sign reading Forever Homes. It's pinned beside Sprocket's adoption certificate. Forgiveness can't erase history, but it lightens the margins. Now I sip espresso on my porch, dual boiler machine acquired anyway, while Sprocket naps by the mailbox. Walk Hummingbird Lane at dusk, and you'll spot the mural's calico silhouette guarding tidy doors. Ownership isn't ink on a deed, it's the stubborn promise to protect what's right. Always. Friends, thank you. See you soon.